I see you, but you don't see me. You're engrossed in your book, a paperback cover with a girl in a red dress. I can't see the title, but it doesn't matter. They're all the same. If it isn't boy meets girl, it's boy stalks girl, boy kills girl. The irony isn't lost on me. At the next stop, I use the incoming swell of commuters as an excuse to move closer to you. You hang from the strap in the centre of the carriage, reading one-handed, turning the page with a well-practiced thumb. We're so close now that our coats are touching, and I can smell the vanilla base of your perfume, a scent that will long since faded by the time you leave work. Some women disappear into the loos at lunchtime, touch up their makeup, add a spritz of fragrance. Not you. When I see you after work, the dark grey makeup on your lids will have drifted into tired shadows beneath your eyes, the tint on your lips transferred to countless cups of coffee. You're pretty though, even at the end of a long day. That counts for a lot. Not that it's always about beauty. Sometimes it's exotic looks, or large breasts, or long legs. Sometimes it's class and elegance, all tailored navy trousers and tan heels. And sometimes it's brassy, cheap, slutty even. Variety is important. Even the finest steak becomes dull when you eat it all the time. Your handbag is larger than average. You usually carry it over your shoulder, but when the train is busy, as it is at this stage of your commute, you put it on the floor between your legs. It is slouched open, allowing me to see inside. A purse, soft brown calf leather with a gilt clasp. A hairbrush, blonde hairs trailing from its bristles. A reusable shopping bag neatly rolled into a ball. A pair of leather gloves. 2 or 3 brown envelopes, torn open then pushed into the bag along with their contents. Post snatched from the doormat after breakfast, opened on the platform while you wait for your first train. I crane my neck to read what's printed on the uppermost envelope. So now I know your name. Not that it matters. You and I aren't going to have the sort of relationship that needs names. I take out my phone and swipe up to reveal the camera. I turn towards you, use my thumb and forefinger to zoom in until only your face is in the frame. If anyone noticed me now, they'd just think I was uploading a record of my commute to Instagram or Twitter. #selfie. A silent click, and you're mine. As the train takes a bend, you let go of the ceiling strap and lean down for your handbag, still intent on your book. If I didn't know you better, I'd think you'd caught me looking and were moving your belongings out of view. But it isn't that. The bend in the track simply means it's nearly your stop. You're enjoying this book. Usually you'll stop reading much earlier than this, when you reach the end of a chapter and you slip between the pages the postcard you use as a bookmark. Today you're still reading, even as the train pulls into the station, even as you shoulder your way through to the door, saying, "Excuse me" and "sorry" a dozen times. You're still reading, even as you walk towards the exit, your eyes flicking upwards to make sure you don't bump into anyone. You're still reading, and I'm still watching. My next book, I See You, is a psychological thriller, a standalone story. It's not part of a series. It opens with a woman, Zoe, on her way home from work as she's flicking through a free London newspaper and she comes across a photograph of herself in an advert in the classifieds, and she sets out to find out why it's there. So when I lived in Paris many years ago, I used to leave my flat at exactly 5 to 8 every day. And if I left at 5 to 8, I would fall into step behind a woman who used to carry her high heels and wear trainers, and a man who smoked a cigar on his way to work. And if I left just a minute later, I would end up behind the cigar man and have to sort of overtake him so as not to have his smoke in my face. And it was the first time I'd realised that commuters, it was the first time I'd commuted and realised that commuters do exactly the same thing every single day. And then more recently, I went to London with a friend of mine, and she said, "Oh, don't stand here on the platform. We need to stand over there." And she moved me sort of 1.5 meters because that was where the doors opened. And I realised as I went with her to work that all across the world there are commuters standing in exactly the same place every day, taking the same escalator, ducking through the exit on a particular route. They could do their route with their eyes shut. And as a crime writer and as a former police officer, I couldn't help but wonder how dangerous it could be if someone else could track our every move. I set the story in London predominantly because I suppose I was looking for a city where there was a high number of commuters, and London was a very obvious choice, but also because I've always felt slightly creeped out by the underground. Even though there are masses of cameras everywhere and generally you're not on your own, I do find it quite a claustrophobic, quite a scary place. And when I was researching the book, I spent a lot of time wandering around the underground fairly late at night, trying to find the scariest station. And sort of whenever I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, I'd think, oh yes, I feel quite scared now, I'll put this station in the book. I'm in awe of authors who can just sit down and write a book from start to finish and just let the story unfold, because that terrifies me. So I always do a lot of planning. I plot my novels in advance. I know what the twists are mostly, and I know when they're going to come, and I sort of build, I see it a little bit like the framework of the story. And then I write it, and then generally it goes wrong, and after that first draft I'll tear it apart and replot it. But I seem to need to go through that process in order to produce the story I want by the end. There was a lot more research in this book than in my first. I think I was quite lucky with my first. I didn't really need to do much. I spent a lot of time on the underground. I went to see people from British Transport Police and the Metropolitan Police, from the Flying Squad, from London Underground, CCTV units, all sorts of people that work in those fields. Strange things. I'm not sure I found out anything strange that I can tell you. I found out lots of war stories from the Flying Squad, but I definitely can't tell you those. I spend a lot of time examining what frightens me, and thinking about what frightens people in general. So I often do it when I'm dog walking. I'll take the children to school, drop them off, take the dog for a walk, and just mull over my darkest fears. And when I feel really quite upset and uncomfortable about one, then I start thinking about whether that perhaps is a fear that relates to other people. I also read a lot of news and read a lot of magazines, and you can really get a sense from the media and from social media of what people are actually concerned about. I'm constantly feeling uncomfortable when I'm writing my characters. In my first book, there was a viewpoint that made me so horribly uncomfortable. I had to write it with my eyes shut and just type and get the words out there, because I couldn't really bear to have them in my head for too long. With this book, I think I had more fun with it. It felt slightly less personal, and I had a lot of fun with the voice of the attacker and making it as chilling as possible, but it does make me feel slightly grubby afterwards. I love Kelly, my main police character. She is in her early 30s, and she's very feisty, very opinionated. Her sister had a very traumatic incident. They're twins, and her sister had this traumatic incident, which actually her sister has recovered from very well. She's moved on, she's married, she's got children, and Kelly is the one that is really struggling to come to terms with what happened and with the police investigation that followed. And that's really her sort of driver throughout her life and throughout this story, and she has to learn to keep a lid on her emotions. So I certainly didn't set out to write a series, and this book, I See You, is definitely a standalone story. But as I wrote that particular character, I decided that actually I'm not sure I can leave her, that there's more I want to explore about her, both before this story starts and afterwards. So I would like to write something, whether it's more books or perhaps TV, I'm not sure. I never anticipated that I Let You Go would be so extraordinarily successful, and whilst that is an amazing problem to have, it nevertheless was a problem when I started writing my second book, because the pressure was horrible, and I had to really fight to get out of the mindset of I've got to write another book as good as I Let You Go, and just sort of put that to one side and think, well, actually, I've got to write the story that wants to be told, and I've got to do it to the best of my ability and hope that people enjoy it. So I spent a lot of time worrying about it, and then got my head down and wrote the book. And actually now I'm hugely proud of I See You. I think in many ways it's a much better book than I Let You Go, and I'm just really hoping that readers think so too. Winning the Theakston's Old Peculier Crime Writing Award for Crime Novel of the Year was just phenomenal. People always say that they didn't expect it, and I'm always a bit suspicious, but I genuinely didn't expect it. I didn't have anything prepared, and so when I went up on stage to collect my award, I just cried a lot, really, and muttered a few words of thanks, but I felt very unprepared. It was just overwhelmingly exciting because I'd been to the Crime Writing Festival at Harrogate for 3 years, and my first year I'd come as an unpublished writer. My second year I was launching my debut, and then to come back in year 3 and pick up the award for Crime Novel of the Year was sort of beyond anything that I'd ever dreamt of.